Look at the little princess. My sister-in-law, Blair, still in her white dress, pushed a 4D ultrasound photo right against my nose. I have lived my life looking at medical images for 17 years as a radiologist, so I knew it in a single glance. The way the shadows fell was unnatural. There was a border along the nose and chin that looked like it had been pasted on. Isn't she cute? I even got a teddy bear with a heartbeat recorded inside. She had a face that believed without a shred of doubt. Only my fingertips went cold. I grabbed my brother Nash's wrist and dragged him into the laundry room at the back of the house. Outside, the countdown of 10, 9 had begun, and a giant black balloon was swaying in the wind. Nash, that is not a baby. The moment I said it, my voice sounded hard. A short phrase I heard during my residency floated through my mind. I didn't fully understand its meaning yet. What is true rarely needs any defense at all. My brother tried to laugh it off, but when he saw my face, the laughter stopped. If you were the one noticing something off in this situation, do you think I should have stayed silent? Is it wrong of me to have said this single sentence? From the moment I passed through the gate, the garden had turned into a machine built for celebration. Pink and white balloons, paper plates, cupcakes, floral wreaths for photos. Even people I didn't know were laughing along to the sweet pop music played by the DJ. Blair was in the center, gathering all the light. My sister-in-law was always someone who made an effort to be cheerful. She was a teacher and never cried in front of the children. I knew she had been through hard times. That's why, in that first second, I wanted to be wrong. The family's hope almost outweighed my doctor's intuition. I was afraid of that part of myself. When I handed the photo back, Blair didn't miss my reaction. Well, is she cute? I nodded. I could feel my cheeks twitching. I felt that the more words I added, the thicker the lie would become. Grabbing Nash's wrist was a reflex. He had a beer in one hand and raised an eyebrow in annoyance before he even looked at my face. Starting this again? We had been this way for a long time. I was the one who listed the evidence, and my brother was the one who laughed and let it slide. The laundry room was empty. It smelled strongly of detergent, and the metal of the dryer gleamed faintly. The sounds from outside felt distant, separated by a single wall. I lowered my voice. The shadows on the ultrasound are wrong. The contours look processed. It's the same compositing quirk I saw back when I supervised commemorative ultrasound images. It was easy to explain using medical terms. Reproducibility, artifacts, overlay. But in a family setting, those words become blades. My brother gave a short laugh at first. Only the way he laughed was exactly the same as in the old days. Elena, Blair is finally happy. Please don't ruin this. I didn't want to ruin it. Instead of retorting, I took a step closer. I'm not ruining it. That thing is already broken. My brother's fingers rubbed the cold aluminum of the beer can, as if trying to erase something. Just then, the door behind us burst open. My mother, Martha, walked in. She was wearing a teen girl sash across her chest. Her cheeks were flushed, and her eyes were already prepared to cry. What are you two doing? We're taking pictures. Her gaze pierced me. Don't tell me you're making that difficult face again. Today is a family day. My brother spoke first, lightly, as if creating an escape route. Elena is saying the ultrasound is fake. Mother's hand flew to her chest. It was a dramatic gesture, but she was serious. Fake? How can you say that? That child's nose looks just like mine. I look at it every night. My father, Frank, also poked his head in. He had 3 cupcakes on a paper plate. The look he gave me was the same one from when I was a child and had to redo my science fair project. You work too much. Shadows, angles. You've developed a habit of looking for problems. I explained. The inconsistency of the shadows, the repetition of the contours, the sense of déjà vu. The more I spoke, the more I became the person out of place. Mother waved her hand mid-sentence. That is your bad habit. Blair spent 45 minutes getting those pictures taken. She even got to choose the music. In her mind, time spent equaled authenticity. My brother spoke. His voice was small, but it reached me clearly. Stop it. Don't embarrass us. Embarrass. Ooh. I felt the back of my throat tighten. If I didn't stop this year, it might be irreversible later. But if I stopped it now, I would be the one polluting the happiness in this garden. I could see Blair through the glass. She had her hand on her belly, surrounded by friends, laughing. Her movements were slow, her posture slightly unnatural. It looked like the gestures of a pregnant woman. It was easy for me to suspect it might be acting, but her eyes didn't look like they were lying. If she was lying, what was the point of us being a family? The sound of the countdown from outside grew louder. Someone was shouting. Everyone gather around. 1 minute left. I swallowed my words. At the same time, I judged myself for swallowing them. Okay, let's go back. My voice was as dry as a hospital corridor. My brother exhaled. He hadn't won. The conflict had merely been postponed. When we returned to the garden, Blair ran up to us. Are you okay? You look pale. I took her hand. It was warm and slightly clammy. I'm fine. Everything is perfect. The moment I said it, the lie lingered on my tongue. Persistent, like sweet cake. The photo session began, and Mom was already crying. Dad raised his plastic glass, looking as if he were about to say a prayer. Nash stood behind Blair, resting his chin on her shoulder. When his eyes met mine, he shook his head slightly. It was the signal he used when we were kids, and I was brandishing logic. Let it go. Someone raised their voice. Everyone gather around. 1 minute left. I stood a little outside the circle of celebration, holding a paper plate, neither eating nor putting it down. My hands hovered half-heartedly, a distance where it seemed someone might talk to me, but no one actually would. That distance felt just right to me. Blair's smile never faltered. The fact that it didn't falter looked a little unnatural. It didn't look like the smile of a pregnant woman. It was closer to the expression of someone fulfilling an expected role to the very end. Nash placed his hand on her back repeatedly. Rather than supporting her, the movement looked like he was confirming her position. I couldn't tell if that was natural for a husband or a sign of anxiety. Watching them, I thought about who I was in this place. A person who observes as a doctor. A person who should celebrate his family. I felt that neither was welcome here. So, I didn't move. I didn't ask questions. I didn't offer corrections. I knew that not moving was the choice that would draw the least attention. I knew in my head that it wasn't the right number of weeks to determine the gender. But no one was talking about that. 10, 9, 8. I held up my smartphone. I became one of the photographers. 7, 6, 5. Blair squeezed my hand tightly. I felt her bones rub against mine. 4, 3, 2. Mom grabbed Dad's arm and cried. And Dad was laughing. I wanted to close my eyes. But if I did, it would mean I was running away. 1. The black balloon burst, and pink confetti filled the air. Cheers erupted, and someone popped a bottle of champagne. Blair covered her mouth with both hands, crying and laughing. Nash lifted her up, and Mom ran over to kiss her belly, whispering, "My granddaughter," over and over. The confetti tangled in my hair. I couldn't move. The video was recording, like evidence. Blair hugged me. The smell of perfume and vanilla. It's a girl. Isn't it amazing? I hugged her back. I didn't know if hugging her back was wrong. I was celebrating her. I was seeing her off. It looked like both. The party continued. Cake, gifts, tiny pink underwear. Nash kept smiling. Mom and Dad's gaze towards me softened, because I had read the room. In the evening, the cleanup began. Tables were folded. Trash bags were carried out. I headed to the kitchen, clutching my paper plate. Blair's voice came from behind me. It was lower than before. Hey, wait. I feel sick. She had one hand on the table, and the other was touching her lower abdomen. Her face was white. Her steps were small, and her body swayed as if searching for its center of gravity. Nash rushed over. Are you okay? Blair tried to laugh. Maybe I ate too many cupcakes. It feels a bit like cramping. The way she said cramping opened a drawer in my mind. I didn't voice the diagnosis. This is family time. I am a doctor. But being a doctor here becomes a blade. But choosing where to sheath the blade was also my job. Let's go to the hospital. I'll drive. I said it shortly. Blair nodded. Nash looked at the garden cleanup and then at Mom's face for a second. Mom waved her hand immediately. Go. Take care of my girls. The words, my girls, showed a future that was already complete inside her. On the way to the car, I looked back just once. The garden was still bright, and people remained. Confetti was scattered on the grass, and someone stepped on it as they walked. The music had stopped, and only the sounds of cleaning could be heard. The place for celebration seemed to have finished its role, but the faces of the people gathered there showed they didn't think it was over yet. I didn't feel like I could return to that circle. If I returned, I would have to play out the rest. The role of pretending nothing happened, laughing, waving, and taking pictures. Nash and Blair got into the back seat. The sound of the door closing was a little too strong. Reacting to that sound, Blair tried to say, "I'm okay," but stopped mid-sentence. I sat in the driver's seat and started the engine. The lights of the garden flowed to the edge of the windshield. The blessing was still there, but I was driving away, leaving it behind my back. I felt I didn't need to add anything to prove I was right. Sometimes, instead of an explanation, only distance remains. The car was quiet. Pink confetti stuck to my clothes and fell onto the seat, like evidence peeling away. Through the rearview mirror, I saw Nash stroking Blair's shoulder. "It's probably nothing." It sounded less like words for his wife, and more like a spell to convince himself. The emergency entrance was calm for a Saturday night. I used the staff entrance and bypassed triage. The nurse in charge knew me and guided us without asking anything. She was quick to read the situation. I never know if that's a blessing or cruel in times like this. The exam room. Blair lifted her clothes before being asked. Nash held her hand, his knuckles turning white. Blair shrugged her shoulders at the coldness of the gel. The monitor lit up, and a black and white world appeared. I looked at the screen. I chose a job where I cannot pretend not to see. There was no gestational sac, no fetal pole, no heartbeat. Instead, there was a complex mass of shadows, thick boundaries, internal septations, blood flow running through it. I saw something familiar, even though I was used to seeing it. There was nothing I wanted to see less. The nurse looked at me. We were reading the same image. Blair stared at the ceiling, waiting for that commemorative photo to appear. Nash leaned forward. "Where is she? Where is she?" His voice cracked. It was a voice asking for the location of his daughter. The doctor came in a calm voice, choosing technical terms and translating them into understandable words. "We cannot confirm a pregnancy. Instead, there is a large mass on the ovary. With hormone-producing types, pregnancy tests can sometimes show positive." The explanation was polite and correct, because it was correct. It was merciless. Blair shifted her gaze to the screen, not to understand, but to confirm. Her lips parted, but no voice came out. Nash repeated the same words. "No, we heard the heartbeat. We have a video. It was 4D. We have, and we saw were his supports. I am a doctor." That title was more than enough reason to be in this room. But today, I was not working. I wasn't a sister, or a sister-in-law. I was here as Nash's little sister. Our parents were in a different place. The family always gathered over there. I was only called when needed. So, I committed to the role of the listener. I wouldn't ask questions or add anything until asked. What is true rarely needs any defense at all. I hesitated whether to interject. I am family. I am a doctor. Both were hindrances right now. Still, I ended up speaking briefly. It's highly likely a recording. They play the same sound for everyone. The moment I said it, Blair's eyes turned to me. It wasn't anger. It was the look of seeing something broken. "Why?" Her voice was thin. "Why to me?" I couldn't tell if the question was directed at me or the world. I couldn't answer. If I answered, I would become the person who delivers the conclusion. Admission was decided. Consent forms were brought in, and preoperative explanations proceeded. The words continued, but the air in the room grew heavier. Blair turned to the side and cried quietly. Nash continued to stroke her back. It was a touch that said it was the only thing he could do. When I stepped out into the hallway, I found pink confetti stuck to the sole of my shoe. I tried to peel it off, but my fingers wouldn't move well. I thought to myself, was not drawing the blade in that garden kindness, or was it cowardice? And now, drawing the blade here, was it salvation? Or was it my own self-satisfaction? Is it my fault? The question finally returned to inside of me. When we left the hospital, it was already night. The sound of the automatic doors closing cut off behind my back, and the air felt 1 degree lighter. It should have felt lighter, but the depths of my chest remained heavy. The parking lot lights were white, making the shadows on the ground stark. Only the outlines of people remained distinct. Nash walked without saying anything. His back ahead of me was slightly hunched. I followed a few steps behind, a distance where I wouldn't pass him, a distance where I wouldn't walk side by side. It happened naturally. Blair remained at the hospital. Explanations continued, documents were brought, and a room was assigned. Her hand, signing the consent form, almost stopped halfway, then moved again. Only the word preoperative was placed ahead, and the specific time hadn't been decided yet. "I'll be right back." Saying that, Blair tried to smile. It was a time too early for smiling. Nash placed his hand on her shoulder without a word. It was a touch that said it was all he could do. When we got in the car, Nash started the engine immediately. He didn't turn on the radio. The wipers moved once, making a dry sound. It wasn't raining. For a while after we started driving, neither of us opened our mouths. The road was empty. Every time we got caught at a red light, the silence inside the car was emphasized. "My bad," Nash said. His voice was directed straight ahead. "For what?" I asked back. "Dragging you into this." That was all. I didn't know who the words were for. For me, for Blair, or for the situation itself. No words came to mind to correct or supplement him. I looked out the window. The spacing of the streetlights had been constant for a while. No matter how far we drove, the distance remained the same. We were just moving forward through an unchanging arrangement. I knew in my head that it wasn't the right number of weeks to know the gender. It's written in textbooks. I've explained it many times. But no one was talking about that. Not in the exam room. Not in the doctor's explanation. And not now, in this car. Words always come late. And words that come late are usually hard to use. "Are you going back to the house?" Nash asked. I didn't need to check which house. My parents' house. The place arranged for today. The place where the presence of people gathered to celebrate still lingered. I didn't have the energy to consider other options. I couldn't find a reason to go back to the hospital, or to go anywhere else. "Yeah," I answered. The conversation didn't continue further. Nash adjusted his grip on the steering wheel and slowed down just a little. I could tell by the sound that we were approaching the house. When we arrived in front of the house, the porch light was on. The light looked like it was for waiting, but I couldn't think of it as a welcome. Before taking out his keys, Nash took just one deep breath. It was the breath of a person who knows there is a world requiring explanation behind the door. I stood beside him, saying nothing. If I spoke, the roles would begin again. If I didn't speak, we could stop here. The sound of the door opening came, and the air from inside the house flowed out. It was slightly warmer than the hospital. Just that told me I had come to a different place. Entering the foyer, the house was still in the middle of cleanup. On the shoe rack, several paper bags were stacked. I knew what was inside without looking. Paper plates, napkins, leftover sweets, remnants of the celebration. The porch light remained on. No one had turned it off. It looked like time had just moved forward without deciding whose role it was to turn it off. There was a noise from the living room. Mom and Dad were standing there. Mom was standing at the sink in the kitchen. She had taken off her apron. She noticed us just as she finished washing her hands. Her movement stopped for a second. In that second, I knew she prepared herself to listen. How was it? Her voice was low and calm. It wasn't that she wasn't worried, but it wasn't a voice of panic either. Whatever the result, it was a voice intended to contain it within the house. Nash answered. She was admitted. That was all. He didn't say the reason, the time, or the next plan. Mom nodded. I see. That must have been hard. And with that, the topic ended. Dad was sitting at the dining chair, leaning back, hands clasped. He was quiet, like a different person from the man who was taking photos all day. Where is Blair? At the hospital. Nash's voice was short. Dad didn't ask any more. It was the silence of a person who knows that asking will expand the story. I took off my jacket and hung it on a chair. The sound of the fabric rustling echoed louder than necessary. No one reacted to the sound. Not reacting was good manners here. I stood at the edge of the kitchen and didn't move. I felt that if I decided on a place to stand, my role would return. If I sat, I would become family. If I moved, I would become a helper. I didn't want to choose either right now. Mom opened a drawer, closed it, and opened it again. A gesture of checking tools she didn't plan to use just once. It looked like she was trying to dilute the silence by making noise. Dad didn't change his posture in the chair. The weight he leaned against the backrest was a signal saying, "It's okay." It was the way a person sits who has kept saying it's okay. Nash avoided the center of the room. He leaned against the wall, dropping his gaze to the floor, positioning himself like someone who knows that if he makes eye contact, the explanation will begin. I looked at my face reflected in the metal of the sink, darker than the hospital lighting, and slightly distorted. In this house, being distorted looked more natural. How is Blair doing right now? Mom's voice was low and quiet. She wanted to know her state, not the situation. It was a question to confirm emotions. She's resting, Nash answered. No further words were added. We knew that pain and anxiety could all be included in the word resting. Dad reached for his smartphone, then stopped halfway. If he turned on the screen, he would see the rest. If he saw the rest, he wouldn't be able to go back. His stopped finger remained in the air. I thought to myself, in this house, before confirming anything, a time to tidy up is always necessary. In this house, events are rarely left as they are. Always, somewhere, the shape is tidied, phrasing is aligned, corners are rounded, and it is made into a form that is safe to present to the outside. That was the way it had been done for a long time. I watched Mom transfer cake into a storage container, making sure the cut pieces were all the same size, because if just one was bigger or smaller, it would become a topic later. Dad was a person who organized photos. He never left them as taken. He decided the order, deleted the unnecessary ones, and rearranged them into a form that could explain, "It was a good day." Nash didn't move between the two of them. By staying still, he seemed to be trying to maintain the balance of the room. I didn't join in. If I joined, I would become one of the tidiers. If I didn't tidy, I would become a disruptor. I couldn't choose either right now. So I kept looking at my face reflected in the sink, even if distorted, in a position where I wouldn't be erased. The word tidy is convenient. Rounding corners, putting away excess, making everything the same size. Facts and emotions are included in that. But if you tidy too much, things get cut out. This time, I tried not to think about who that was. Mom boiled water. The sound of the pot was a little loud. "Want some tea?" I shook my head. It wasn't that I wasn't thirsty. I just didn't feel like accepting anything here right now. Nash reclasped his hands at the edge of the sofa. His fingers turned white. Too much force. Even though he should know that letting go would make it easier. I said nothing. Not because there were no right words, but because I knew right words were useless here. Standing at the edge of the kitchen, I looked at the glasses in the sink, stacked, half-washed. Some still had lipstick marks. They would disappear if wiped, but no one tried to wipe them. Mom took out a storage container and transferred the remaining cake. "We can eat this later." She said it like she was talking to herself, and closed the lid. A movement of stirring the future. Dad turned his smartphone over and placed it on the table. The thing he had been touching repeatedly until just a while ago. I think he was organizing photos and videos. He is a person who makes events, things that happened, by recording them. Nash sat on the edge of the sofa, leaning forward looking at the floor. His hands on his knees opened and closed several times. It looked like he was redoing the motion of supporting someone. "Don't let Blair push herself," Mom said. It wasn't an order. It was a confirmation in the shape of worry. Because a lot happened today. No one checks what is included in a lot. The hospital room, the explanation, the word preoperative. Everything is bundled together and put in the same box. Dad opened his mouth. "What about that video?" His gaze remained on the wood grain of the table. It was just a commemorative thing, right? A way of speaking that needed no explanation. I said nothing. If I spoke, I would return to the hospital. If I didn't speak, I could stay here tonight. Mom continued. "Surely, it's some kind of mistake." That wasn't hope. It was a word for organization. Doctors are human too, after all. I don't know who that phrase was meant to protect. Nash nodded slightly. "We haven't been told anything definitive yet." The word definitive was slightly off. I didn't correct that misalignment. Dad looked up. "Elena." Hearing my name, I looked up. "What do you think?" It had been a long time since I was asked that question in this house. I inhaled. It was a breath taken when not wearing a white coat. "Truth is a blade." The words I heard as a resident floated up. "You can choose to cut or not to cut, but once you touch it, blood will flow." I don't know. I said that. It was true. I didn't know. Mom's shoulders dropped slightly. Dad didn't ask anything more. Nash didn't look at me. That night, I stayed in the guest room. Even with the lights out, I couldn't sleep. The sound of walking in the hallway, the water sounds from the kitchen, the sounds of the house breathing. I could hear them all. Just being here made me feel like my role was returning. I used to think this house was a place that returned to normal if you gave the right answer. Find the mistake, fix it, and laugh. That was my role. But now, it's different. There are places that don't return even if you offer correctness. And I might be the first person to stand on that boundary line. Still, I said nothing. I don't even know if saying nothing was right. I just knew that I could no longer laugh in the same way in this house. Even when morning came, the house was quiet. I didn't set an alarm. There was no need. Light entering through the gap in the curtains made a thin strip on the floor. It was the same position as yesterday. Just that told me time was continuing. For a while, I sat on the guest room bed without moving. The bedding was neatly arranged. No trace of anyone entering. This was a room for staying over, not a place for living. When I went out into the hallway, there was noise from the kitchen. Mom was already up. The sound of oiling a pan. The sound of closing a drawer. The short sound of dishes touching. All of it was the same procedure as yesterday. The only change was the lack of words. Good morning. When I said it, Mom turned around. Good morning. Her voice was normal. A voice that didn't bring yesterday's continuation into here. No one was sitting at the table yet. 4 chairs lined up at equal intervals. Who sat where had been decided long ago? I didn't pull out my chair. Mom poured coffee. Want some? I shook my head. Later. Later is a word used many times in this house. Usually, it just ends there. Dad had spread out a newspaper. The sound of turning pages was constant. I could tell he was skimming. Rather than the content, it was a motion to maintain his posture. I stood at the edge of the kitchen, not moving. Mom turned the eggs and lowered the heat. About Blair. She started to say, then stop. Instead, she took the frying pan off the stove. The sound of the fire going out sounded just a little long. Tell her not to push herself. I don't know what is included in the word push. Is it about her body or her feelings? It seemed to include both, yet miss both. Yeah, I answered. I didn't think about whether I intended to convey it. Dad folded the newspaper. Can you take time off work for a while? It wasn't a question, but a confirmation. A way of speaking to gauge how this house would rotate from now on. Probably, I answered. Today is my day off, but I didn't correct him. There was no sound from the second floor. Neither Nash nor Blair must be up. No one goes to check. The roles hadn't been decided yet. I looked at the smartphone on the counter. The screen was dark. I knew yesterday's video was in there. If I didn't touch it, it wouldn't open. If it didn't open, I wouldn't have to watch the rest. Mom set out plates. 4 of them. I didn't head for my seat. We can reheat it later, Mom said. No one asked when later was. I grabbed my bag. It had been left on the floor since yesterday. I checked the contents and swapped only my wallet and keys, so as not to carry anything unnecessary. Going already? Mom said. I'm going out for a bit. I didn't add a reason. If I added one, it would become a conversation. Instead of an explanation, I chose distance. I put on my shoes in the entryway. My hands tying the laces were a little slow. Dad looked over. Call us when things settle down. It wasn't an order. It was a phrase used many times in this house. I nodded. I didn't know the scope of the word settle right now. When I opened the door, the outside air was cold. Not enough to take a deep breath. Inhale, exhale. That's enough. I got in the car and started the engine. I didn't turn on the radio. Yesterday's sound still lingered in my ears. A little while after I started driving, I thought, there is no need to do anything to prove correctness. You can take distance without explaining. I said nothing to anyone. Not to Blair, not to Nash, not to my parents. It might be seen as running away, but I felt like I was making a choice. In the rearview mirror, the house grew smaller. That garden, that kitchen. They are now outside the frame. While driving, I almost signaled to turn several times, then stopped. The road to the hospital. The road back to being family. I felt I didn't have to choose either right now. Every time I stopped at a traffic light, the smartphone in my bag felt a little heavier. If I touched it, I would be responding to someone's expectation. If I didn't touch it, I would be a cold person. I didn't want to be either. If I put on my white coat, I can give answers. If I return as a family member, the role resumes. Both were easy. I have seen many times that the easier the choice, the greater what remains afterwards. So that day, I didn't proceed in a direction to solve anything. I don't know if distancing myself is running away, but right now, I couldn't see any other option. Truth is a blade. So today, I won't hold it. If it becomes necessary, I'll think about it again. For now, I'm placing distance. That was the only thing I decided. Several days passed. I knew the date had changed by looking at the calendar. I wasn't consciously counting, just morning and night repeated. And while thinking a call might come, the time without one continued. Contact from the hospital was concise. Confirmation of numbers. Additional tests. Observation. Hospitalization continues. The surgery date hasn't been set yet. I exchanged only short messages with Nash. Calm today. One more test added. The reports were only facts. containing no emotion. There was no direct contact from Blair. I tried not to think about whether she was blaming me or resting. If I thought about it, I felt my role would return. I returned to work. When I put on my white coat, my body moved on its own. Explain, confirm, make decisions. I felt a little relieved that I could do that, and at the same time, felt distance. Even after several days, the world didn't change particularly. If I went to work, patients came. Tests proceeded as scheduled, and results fit into their designated places. While wearing the white coat, I was normal. Only the way home was slightly different. Without a reason to rush, and without making stops, I continued to go straight home. I picked up my smartphone several times, then put it down. It was a motion to confirm there were no notifications. I don't know if I was relieved that no contact came, or if I was trying to get used to it not coming. At night, while washing dishes, I noticed the sound of the water was constant. There was no one in the house I had to explain things to. The sound just flowed, and there was no reason to stop it. I thought, the choice to take distance might be less about changing something, and more about accepting time where nothing happens. Nothing happening isn't easy, but compared to continuing to act something out, it was a little easier to breathe. At lunch break, I opened my smartphone. No contact from my parents. I know it's not that they aren't worried. We just both understand that this is a time not to make contact. That night, I ate alone. An amount not too large. A menu that wouldn't increase the dishes. I didn't know that not adjusting to someone else's convenience was this quiet. Sometimes, I remember that night. The smell of the house. The porch light. The sounds of the kitchen. A time when no one blamed anyone, and no one decided anything. What should I have done in that place? Should I have spoken up? Should I not have spoken? I still don't know the correct answer. If I had stayed silent, the atmosphere would have been preserved. If I had spoken clearly, the result might have been different, but both are hypothetical. Truth is a blade. If you cut, blood flows. Even if you don't cut, the weight remains. I still hold that blade. I'm just choosing where to swing it. It was night when a call came from Nash after a long time. Can you show your face a bit tomorrow? I knew it was about the hospital. I'll think about it, I answered. After hanging up, I didn't move for a while. The phrase, I'll think about it, is convenient. Without saying I will go or I won't go, I can create time. I haven't decided yet. Will I continue to keep my distance? Will I return? Or will I search for a different shape? I look out the window. The city lights are lined up at regular intervals. The same arrangement as the way home in the second chapter. It wasn't the right number of weeks to know the gender. That is a fact, but I don't know if I was right to voice that. I am a doctor. At the same time, I am family. I can't completely throw away either position. However, there is one thing I know. I can no longer accept the same role in that house just as it was. There is no need to do anything to prove correctness. You can take distance without explaining. Is taking distance coldness? Is remaining silent irresponsible? Or was that my own way of consideration? I haven't given an answer yet. What would you do? What should I have done in that place? I distanced myself. I still don't know if that was right. If you were in the same position, what do you think I should have done in that moment?